Welcome back to VTR Boxing Podcast Network. I'm your host, Sean, and this is my reaction to Jai Opetaia brutally, and I mean brutally, knocking out David Nyika in what was quite an exciting fight, actually, and wasn't sure what to expect because obviously Nyika is stepping up in this fight. And Opetaia is the proven champion so far, the proven fighter. And as we said in the preview, myself and Luke, if you listen to it, we were talking about a lot of people questioning Opetaia and questioning his resume. But you know what? I think we need to take a step back and really appreciate what we've got in Opetaia. Yes, he's been challenged by Marius Brady. This has been his biggest challenge so far in his career. But the one thing that he has in abundance, and that is spite. And I don't think there's a lot of fighters out there in this day and age that possess that spite, that will to really take somebody out. And it's a quality in a fighter that I think only very few fighters really have. Like, when you look at what Opetaia did in there, you could see the determination on his face to really want to get the job done. And he went out there and he certainly did it in emphatic fashion. The first couple of rounds, it was back and forth. Nyika was in there, he was holding his own, he was throwing shots back. I think the difficulty is with Nyika is that his defence got quite lackadaisical as it went into the third and fourth round, and he started to let his hands go, but then wasn't really paying attention to what was actually coming back to him. And I think if he would have paid more attention to that, just maybe the fight would have lasted longer. Maybe you could have taken Opetaia into the second half of the fight, because people were saying beforehand that Opetaia fades in the second half of a fight, which is true. We've seen it against the Brady's fights. But for me, Opetaia has just proven once again he's right up there alongside Ramirez as probably the best cruiserweight. And that's the fight he's asking for. That's the fight he's talked about in the post-fight interview. He wants all the belts in the division. He wants to unify division, and he wants to become undisputed in the division. Now, to do that, he's got to go through the best. And Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez is the other fighter in this division that I believe is right up there amongst Opetaia as the best in this division. And we've seen how good Zurdo is since he's moved up into this division. He seems to have settled down quite well, and I think he's going to be a real difficult fight for Jai Opetaia in the future, should that happen between one another. I'm looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. But this particular fight, it was one of those fights where I don't think it was ever going to go the distance, and I did say that in the preview. I didn't think it was going to go the distance. I thought there was going to be a stoppage, and I did favour Opetaia to get the win when I previewed the fight with Luke. But the way in which it played out probably was a little bit earlier than what I thought it would actually be. And again, I put that down to Nyika giving it a go and not really waiting around to let Opetaia come at him all the way through the fight. And it was nice for David Nyika to see that he could actually put it on Opetaia. And it was also nice to see, on the flip side of it, that Opetaia was willing to take a backward step, willing to weather a storm, and willing to then come back out again and throw them shots and throw them with venom, so much so that, he was able to get through and hurt Nyika and eventually stop him and beat him in emphatic fashion. I've seen a lot of talk in the aftermath of the fight about the emphatic end and how that will affect Nyika going forward, and quite rightly so. People have got to have reservations about that type of a brutal defeat. Will it affect his career? I mean, that was his 11th pro fight, and yes, it was a brutal stoppage. Can he come back from it? I think so. I don't see why he couldn't come back from that. We've seen fighters get absolutely ironed out before and come back and still be fantastic fighters and still go on to do something. I think Nyika could be a really good fighter in this division. I think he'll learn from this, and I think defence will be a big thing, not to go toe-to-toe. It kind of felt like he probably knew he might be overmatched in this fight and he might be right up against it, so he's took his opportunity and he's gone out on his shield. I mean, that's how I perceived it. I don't know how you guys listening and watching perceived it, but for me, I perceived it as a guy that knew he was in there and he was up against the odds, and he'd taken the fight with only 3 weeks' notice, and he just went at it and he just tried and it just didn't work out for him. I do think he'll come back and I think he will be a good fighter in this division. But for Opetaia now, it's about the Zerdo fight. It's the one we want to see. Hopefully we can get that this year. We can get a big fight between Opetaia and Zerdo, and I think that will be a really, really good fight. And I would actually say that is a 50-50. Early on now, I'd say that's a 50-50. And if you don't agree, well, that's fine. But I think Zerdo is a really, really good boxer. And I think he will give Opetaia difficulty because Zerdo is also a mover. And I think Opetaia does struggle a little bit with movers. He struggles a little bit with fighters that are able to take the punishment and give it back. And because you had the likes of Marius Bradis, who was so seasoned, he was able to take the punishment for Opetaia and dish it back out. It wasn't an easier fight for Opetaia, and that's where the only real flaws we've seen in his career so far have been against Bradis. And I think if you're a fighter going up against Opetaia, you've got to look at the Bradis fights, and you've got to look at what Bradis did in those fights to be able to study and move forward and look at ways in which you can beat Opetaia. But I think, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. The one thing he's got in abundance is just absolute spite, the ability to want to finish a fight. There's no hesitation with him. You know, he's a really good finisher when it comes down to it, when he's got his fighters hurt. So that's something that will put him in good stead moving forward for the Zerdo fight and beyond, of course. But he's an exciting fighter. He's been an exciting fighter for the past couple of years since he really broke onto the world stage with the first win over Bradis. A lot of people are raving about him, and rightly so. He's one of my favourite fighters to watch because I like watching the all-action style. I like the fact he doesn't really take a backward step. He's happy to take a bit of punishment, and he loves to dish it out. And, you know, as a fan, that's kind of first and foremost something I really love about the sport and watching. It's exciting to watch. So it's really going to be exciting to see. And now as he's stepping up to the real big levels now against the biggest fighters out there, how good Opetaia really is, and that's when we will know how good he is. I know in the past, the conversation that's been had about Opetaia is, you know, they pick up his resume and say maybe he's just slightly overrated when he fought Bradis. You know, Bradis was over the hill, and the guys that he's fought, with all due respect to them, weren't at the same level or weren't ready for that level yet. And you can rightly say these things, but I think what he's done is he's beat most of these guys in emphatic fashion. And the one fighter he hasn't beaten in emphatic fashion, but has still beaten, is Bradis and got that experience. So I think moving forward, Opetaia, I think the Zerdo fight absolutely a must-have for 2025 and one that I would really, really love to see. And I also think that, you know, as we move in to the next year of his career, I think the likelihood is he will eventually move up to heavyweight. But whilst we've got him at cruiserweight, I think it's an exciting time. He brings a bit of sexiness to that division and something that we haven't really got anymore in that division because, you know, we're starting to lose the best fighters and they're moving up, or, you know, they're moving on in their careers, and it's becoming another division which is a bit like no man's land again. So, you know, hopefully we can continue to get that back with a potential Zerdo and Opetaia fight. But that is my reaction to this particular fight. I enjoyed it. Great fight, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you did, let me know your thoughts and feelings. If you're listening on the audio side on Spotify, leave a comment. If you're watching the video on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think is next for Opetaia. Obviously, the Zerdo fight, that's the one we're all talking about. But is there any other fights out there for him? Can he improve? Can he get better as a fighter? Can he improve on the second half of fights when he gets drawn into the second half of fights? Or is he just a really, really good fighter that there isn't really much for him more to do than to continue what he's doing? Let me know what you think about him. Let me know what you think about Opetaia as a fighter and where he goes in his career. And also, David Nyika, you know, fair play to the lad. He came in 3 weeks' notice. Can he come back from this defeat? Can he move forward in his career? Can he be a good fighter in the cruiserweight division? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that is it from me. Thank you for listening to this very short reaction podcast on the BTR Boxing Podcast Network. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to us. All the audio platforms you can find us on. And if you've not followed us on social media, it's at BTR Boxing Podcast on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and of course, like and subscribe on YouTube. Much appreciated, guys. I'll speak to you soon.